The captivity of these tribes has been under a who's who list of the heathen. From Egyptian to Assyrian to Babylonian to Persian to Greek to Roman to American. From the very beginning, these nations have fought to eradicate these Jews from the face of the earth. Israelites have been in captivity, wandering their own land under rule by the gods of the heathen that their ancestors worshipped in the face of the Most High. So desperate to emulate the idolaters with their idols made from the hands of men that they rebuked their own God, praying and begging for the curses of the heathen. The Most High answered that prayer, and that was the last time. He no longer heard their prayers. They tainted his altar with spoiled offerings. They blamed every other nation on earth for not keeping the covenant of their fathers. As a result, they were cursed into a wicked, ignorant nation that no longer revered the glory of their Creator. Yet, even within that turmoil, there were still great men amongst Judea. It was once written that Alexander the Great conquered the world. In the Old Testament, it is said that he went to the ends of the earth. But how could that be? According to classical history, the earth hadn't completely been discovered yet. So how could he have conquered the entire world? The ends of the earth, according to Greco-Roman history, were no further than the sands of the Sahara, the edge of the Iberian Peninsula, southern Britain. They hadn't even discovered parts of Scandinavia, or had gone as far east as China. This was the first lie and the root of world historiographical and geographical deception. The three-headed eagle has controlled the world through our own blindness to our history. But not any longer. Today we demolish the house of lies built by the heathens of antiquity. After the death of Alexander, the conquered land of the entire world was broken into different kingdoms. According to the historical narrative, Judea and Jerusalem was squeezed in between Egypt, which was controlled by the Ptolemies, and the Seleucid Empire, which encompassed all of Babylon. Greek was the tongue being forced upon the people of the land. Hellenism was the culture, a pagan worship of the pantheon of Greek gods. From Athena, the goddess of wisdom, to Zeus, the god of the sky, Jews were made to bow to these idols and renounce the creator of heaven and earth. And any Hellenized Jew did exactly that, under fear of torture and execution, while others easily assimilated into Greek culture with the hope of becoming prominent to the point of being deified into the pantheon of Greek gods themselves. These Hellenized Jews no longer feared their creator. They feared the Greek. This would initiate one of the greatest untold stories in world history, the Maccabean Revolt. As it is told, around approximately 200 BC, Judea falls under the control of the Seleucid Empire, which is the Babylonian or northern branch of Alexander's allegedly broken empire. Antiochus becomes ruler of the Seleucid Empire around 175 BC, and he makes it his personal mission to eradicate the traditions of Judea. He first replaces the high priest with a Hellenized conspirator named Jason. After this, he has the former high priest Onias murdered. During this time, high priests were the most respected and wisest members of Judea. For the Israelites, they acted as a righteous witness between man and God. Following the heist of sacred relics from the temple, a civil war broke out between the pagan Hellenized Jews and the protectors of the covenant. Antiochus would continue to pillage the temple, even sacrificing a pig on the altar and drenching the entire temple with the blood of swine. This was the ultimate offense to devout Israelites. Around 167, Antiochus, as he is deboing his way throughout the land, forces everyone to sacrifice unclean animals to the Greek gods, except for one family who was having none of that. The book of Maccabees describes the wars that took place between the protectors of the covenant, Rome, and the Hellenized Jews. Out-resourced and outnumbered, Judah Maccabee, aka Judah the Hammer, struck fear into the hearts of all Greco-Romans and Hellenized Jews. Judah and his men successfully forced away the pagan invaders. As the story is told, that upon hearing of the Maccabean domination of all opposing forces in Judea, Antiochus was infuriated and sent a force of reportedly 70,000 men up against a force of smaller than 10,000. And once again, Judah and his men were victorious. After this, they returned to the raptured, desecrated temple and properly restored it. This time is commemorated by the Festival of Lights, also known as Hanukkah. The Maccabean Hasmonean dynasty controlled Jerusalem and Judea independently until the siege of Jerusalem in 37 BC by Rome, Caesar, and King Herod. A half-Jew, he also descended from the line of Esau. This enraged traditional Jews, and they were further enraged by Herod's commission to erect a statue of Caesar in the newly rebuilt temple. From this point on, Israel would become a puppet nation. While all of this is happening during the book of Maccabees, something else very significant is also taking place. The supposed life of Jesus. Pontius Pilate's report to Caesar about the crucifixion of Jesus. There's only one problem. It was written at least 300 years later. Oh, and another problem. It describes Jesus as having a golden beard. It is beyond obvious that this document is completely false, yet Rome holds it as a legitimate part of history. This was the time that Jews were furious with Caesar and Rome. And while this was happening, Rome was doing everything in its power to either eradicate or assimilate religious Jews into their culture. These religious Jews were staunchly resistant to any appropriation of their traditions. According to Roman scribes, Jesus was a friend of Rome and supported Caesar. And the Jews resented him as a blasphemous heretic, calling himself the Son of God. Around the supposed time and life of Jesus, the wisdom of Solomon was either found or written. To be acquainted with you is perfect righteousness, and to know your dominion is the root of immortality. For we weren't led astray by any evil plan of men, nor by painters of fruitless labors. A form stained with various colors, the sight of which leads fools into lust. Their desire is for the breathless form of a dead image. Lovers of evil things and worthy of such hopes are those who make, desire, and worship them. In an uncanny parallel to Islam, according to history, less than 100 years after the death of Jesus, Christianity now permeated the entire land. The Jews in Jerusalem had had enough of this new fledgling messianic movement, and with the waning power of Nero's overspending, the Jews would stage another rebellion against Rome. In 66 CE, Vespasian sent troops into Judea to sack Galilee. One of Rome's most notorious scribes, Josephus, would apparently tell Vespasian that he would eventually become emperor based upon prophecy. Apparently, he did this to save his own life. He would later become very close to Vespasian and the Flavians. This would extremely catapult his influence. After the apparent suicide of Nero, Vespasian was the new ruler, and this solidified Josephus as a top Roman translator and scribe. As it is written, Titus defeats Jerusalem in 70 CE by building a wall around the city and starving people out. Titus completely destroyed the temple and afterwards again steals treasures and relics from the storehouse. He then puts them all on display in Rome, except for one thing: an original scroll from the Holy Scripture. This invasion of the temple is celebrated and commemorated in Rome at the Ark of Titus. Historians have perpetually argued about the chronology as it is related to Jesus, many seem skeptical about the obvious backdating included in the Gospels. These Gospels seem to be backdated approximately 40 years, beginning with the Gospel of Jesus. However, the Flavian dynasty, the quote-unquote authors of such gospel, did not rule Judea during the time the Claudio-Julian dynasty did. Even more suspicious is the fact that the Jesus ministry precisely correlates with the siege of Jerusalem and the end of the Roman-Jewish wars. Furthermore, the etymology of the word gospel literally translates to story of military victory. Now it becomes more obvious that these gospels were written after the siege of Jerusalem. Roman scribes, along with pagan Jewish scribes, took the task upon themselves of countering the supposed Jewish fanaticism for prophecy by constructing gospels of the coming Messiah of their very own. These writings would set the foundation for Christianity. But once again, history goes dark for 200 years. And it wasn't until the arrival of Constantine in the year 325 does anything significant in history happen again. Historians have perpetually argued about the chronology as it is related to Jesus. Many seem skeptical about the obvious backdating included in the Gospels. These Gospels seem to be backdated approximately 40 years, beginning with the Gospel of Jesus. However, the Flavian dynasty, the quote-unquote authors of such gospel, did not rule Judea during the time the Claudio-Julian dynasty did. Even more suspicious is the fact that the Jesus ministry precisely correlates with the siege of Jerusalem and the end of the Roman-Jewish wars. Furthermore, the etymology of the word gospel literally translates to story of military victory. Now it becomes more obvious that these gospels were written after the siege of Jerusalem. Roman scribes, along with pagan Jewish scribes, took the task upon themselves of countering the supposed Jewish fanaticism for prophecy by constructing gospels of the coming Messiah of their very own. These writings would set the foundation for Christianity. But once again, history goes dark for 200 years. And it wasn't until the arrival of Constantine in the year 325 does anything significant in history happen again.